Our facilitator this week's Dementia Caregivers, for this week's book club, is the author of Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One, and a gerontology instructor at Johns Hopkins University's Certificate on Aging program. She's been featured in national media, including the Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, the Washington Post, and the Chicago Tribune. When she's not speaking or writing about caregiving and healthcare, she can be found watching reruns of The Office. Please welcome Jennifer L. Fitzpatrick, MSW, LCSWC, CSP.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the book club. I can't believe we're already at our 13th week. Lucky number 13. We are talking about this week the concept of choice in caregiving. Renewing the caregiving commitment, the concept that caregiving is a choice. Now, I say that, in fact, I actually did a presentation yesterday to caregivers where I talked about the concept of choice. And a lot of times there are people in the audience that really get it and they understand what I'm getting at. And then there are a lot of times where people get very viscerally angry. There's no choice in caregiving. I don't have a choice. There's nobody else. So today is about maybe if you're in that second group, trying to consider whether you can start to look at your caregiving commitment as a choice. And are you going to be able to renew it? Are things flowing smoothly? Do you need to make different choices going forward? So before we get into the content for today, as always, I want to say a big shout out to our fantastic sponsors without whom the virtual book club for dementia caregivers would not exist. And they are Hilarity for Charity, hilarityforcharity.org, and Oasis Senior Advisors, oasissenior-advisors.com. So thank you both for being sponsors of the book club. I want to talk to you a little bit about something that happened to me several years ago, and actually has happened to me many times. So my husband and I have been married 19 years, and we don't have any kids. And for a very long time, or over the years, many people have said to us, well, who's going to take care of you when you get old? Because once somebody meets us and it determines, well, we're not having children, a lot of people are very surprised. A lot of people are very shocked. And I remember real specifically a few years ago, my husband and I were in Florida and we were at an outdoor pub. We were watching a football game. And this couple we wound up talking with for a while was just kept asking about it. Who will take care of you when you get older? And I remember thinking, oh boy, this woman asked the wrong person that question, because she had talked a lot about her kids and how great her kids were, which was wonderful. But I told her a little bit about what I do, and I said, having kids is actually not a guarantee that you have a caregiver someday. It's not a guarantee that you have a caregiver someday. Having children isn't necessarily a guarantee that someone will take care of you when you get old. And she thought about it for a minute and she says, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, in my field, and I know that Tim from Oasis and RJ and anybody who works in our field of older adult care knows countless older persons who may have illnesses, who may have conditions that are problematic for them, and they really don't have a lot of support from others. So this is where I like to emphasize to you, caregivers, particularly you dementia caregivers, you have made a choice, because the list of people who have opted out of caregiving is very lengthy. You go into any nursing home, any assisted living, or any community in the United States or Canada or anywhere, in any type of neighborhood, a high-income neighborhood, a middle-income neighborhood, a lower-income neighborhood, you will see persons who have conditions that are aging by themselves with not much interaction with others caring for them. So this is what I mean by not everybody has a caregiver. And if you're a caregiver, if you consider yourself to be a dementia caregiver, those who are joining us live or those who are joining us later, you've made a choice. Maybe it doesn't feel like you made a choice, but you made a choice. And it's a choice that you right now, I want to ask you to consider framing your life and remembering that you are a really incredible person for doing this, because a lot of people don't step up. And I'm guessing that most of you who are listening to this, you could name a family member or a friend or a sister in another place in the country who does not help, and that person opts out. So you being a caregiver is actually a decision that you lovingly have made. And maybe you made that decision because of your values, maybe religion, maybe it has to do with simply the relationship and love you have for the person who needs care. But I truly believe you've made that decision. And so if you're somebody who falls into that second camp, who gets angry when I say that caregiving is a choice, please try to think about that and really pat yourself on the back. So for today, I want to just take a moment and ask everybody who's joining us today to indicate, that said, do you look at caregiving as a choice? Because I know that there's probably some people that I still have a lot of convincing to do. So Courtney, if you would pull up that poll, if you're able to do that. Well, that's a poll from last week. You know what? We're going to skip. We're going to actually go ahead and skip that poll today. We're going to skip the poll. Don't worry about it, Courtney. No worries. Okay, so I'm going to guess that we've got a lot of people that would say yes, but I bet you we may even have more people that say no, unless that quick little commentary that I made convinced you. In Cruising Through Caregiving, I utilize this quote by Thomas Aquinas, and that is, a man has free choice to the extent that he is rational. So when I talk about the concept of caregiving being a choice, sometimes when you're faced with needing to become a caregiver, or someone that you love, or someone in your family and friend network needing care, you're not always making that decision rationally. A lot of families, they visit mom over the holidays, and she seems like she's not able to do it for herself. You're in shock. Let's move her into our house. You might not have thought it through. Or mom has a crisis where she goes into the hospital and you start really getting involved and notice she's not taking her medicine. Or she has a fender bender and you're noticing that maybe her doctor told her to stop driving a while ago, and you're just noticing and coming into all of this. And so a lot of what we do when we care about someone, or when we love someone, or when we feel like we need to be a caregiver, is not necessarily rational. We don't always think through everything that needs to be done. We don't always think through the impact it's going to have. We've talked about this in previous sessions, the impact it has on our job, the impact it has on the rest of our family, the impact it has on our physical or mental health. So I believe that when we feel like we have free choice when we are rational, and sometimes caregivers don't feel so rational. I want everybody to consider just for a moment those that they know who have opted out of caregiving. That brother in Texas who does nothing. That sister in Florida who calls and then second guesses everything you do, even though she's not doing a whole lot. That cousin, you're taking care of a grandparent, that cousin in Quebec who is saying that, she would have done it differently if she knew the options. So I bet most of you, even if you don't consider caregiving a choice, you do know some people who have opted out. Or you might have friends or maybe you have friends of the family. Maybe your loved one has a neighbor, your mom has a neighbor who's lived next to her for 50 years. And she's doing for herself. She really doesn't have a caregiver. So consider that there really are a lot of people who do opt out of caregiving. Can looking at caregiving as a choice help you? Today, a lot of our sessions have focused on really pragmatic. Like next week, we're going to have a guest from the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. And they're going to help us talk about death, dying, and grief, and navigating that. We've had guests talk about how to make a decision about assisted living from Argentum. But today, it's really about psychologically framing, looking at caregiving. And if we look at caregiving as a choice that we're making every day, Is that able to help you? Will that help you reduce your stress? I believe that it can. For anybody out there who's on the program today or listening to the program at a later date, I want you to think about, if you're married, if you really knew what saying yes to marriage meant, did you really understand? A lot of times when I ask that question of audiences, I get a lot of laughter, because as much as we might love our spouse, and as much as maybe we did a lot of prep, I know for myself, my husband and I had to do premarital counseling as part of getting married in the church. And I know that we thought we knew exactly what we were getting into. We look back 19 years later and we say, oh gosh, we have no idea. And I also ask this question, if you have children, did you know exactly what you were saying yes to? But I believe that all of us, if you're married, you're saying yes to your marriage every day. If you're a parent, you're saying yes to parenthood every day. There are people that have children and then eventually opt out of being a parent. It does happen. But in terms of caregiving, I believe psychologically it can help us to reduce our stress. And here's how. In one way, I think it can help us to reduce our guilt. If you give yourself some credit and you say to yourself, maybe I feel guilty, maybe I feel frustrated, maybe I feel like I'm not doing the best job every day, maybe I snapped at my mother, maybe I could have done better for my dad or my husband or my wife. Just give yourself credit, because there are a lot of people that never even do what you've done so far. If you can reframe and say, I'm going to look at caregiving as, I deserve credit for this, I signed on for this. Even if it's your spouse, even if it's your parent, people opt out all the time. So can you look at the idea of caregiving as a choice, being a way for you to reduce your guilt? Even though I might not be doing things perfectly, I'm choosing to do it the best that I have today, the best that I have this month. Another part of the psychology of looking at caregiving as a choice is to remind yourself that you still have choices. Every day as a caregiver, you have choices. Am I going to remain doing it the way that I've been doing it, or do I need to course correct? How's it going? How's it going today? How's it going so far? How's my health? How's my physical health, my mental health? How's my relationship with my other loved ones in the family who I'm not a caregiver for? How is everything going with my job and my financial situation? You have choices to be a caregiver, and then every day, every week, every month that goes by, you still have choices to adjust and to adapt and to change the way you're caregiving, but you're still doing a good job. And then finally, I believe that looking at caregiving as a choice helps you maintain a position of control, or if you don't feel like you have a position of control, to move into a position of control. I'm in control. If you're the primary caregiver, especially, that if you have those Monday morning quarterbacks that call from Oklahoma, you live in New Jersey, they call you from Oklahoma and say, I think you really should take mom to another specialist, or I really think you should move Aunt Sue into your house. If you remember that caregiving is a choice and that all these other people might be opting out, that maybe they're not a member of your caregiving crew, it helps you to maintain in control and to sort of let those voices go that may criticize you or second guess some of the decisions that you're making. And sometimes even those voices might be a family member or a sibling or somebody maybe that's not as involved, but also sometimes those voices are your own voices. So I believe that caregiving, just shifting your perspective, if you haven't already, to try to look at caregiving as a choice can help you. So now I'd like to take a couple moments to welcome back our sponsors, Hilarity for Charity and Oasis Senior Advisors. These two groups are wonderful and both provide free services to dementia caregivers, and Hilarity for Charity actually for any and all older adults and caregivers. So hilarityforcharity.org, oasissenior-advisors.com. I'm going to ask Tim Ivankovich to share his camera with us so we can say hello. Tim is the CEO of Oasis Senior Advisors. And Tim, I'm wondering if you have any comments on the concept of giving being a choice.
Yeah, it's interesting as you talk about this, Jen. so often that when we're working with our families and our advisors working with the families, that the caregivers are finally, in many cases, just at their wits' end. They can't do it anymore, and they have to give up the reins. And that's the beauty, I think, of using a service like ours, where we can help them find that right assisted living. But also, I think one of the things that we do very well is really confirming with that caregiver that it's okay. It's okay to stop and just say, I can't do this anymore. It's not a reflection of you or your abilities or the guilt that they feel or whatever. But it's okay. And I think we do that very well.
And Tim, with dementia caregiving especially, I think a lot of times, we've talked about this on book club before, it's physically taxing. It's not just that it's hard psychologically or schedule wise, but it can be tough if, say, your husband is 200 pounds and you're a 120-pound woman, and maybe he really needs your help getting into bed or going to the restroom or showering, and making those choices and just reminding yourself, yep, I made a choice to be my husband's caregiver, but now I'm making a choice to do caregiving a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I'm not sure if you may be aware that there's a new documentary out called When All That's Left Is Love. And it goes through basically the last 3 or 4 years of a person's life that's dealing with dementia and the caregiver, and working with them and the frustrations. And you see it firsthand, and it's just riveting and gripping and sad, and where you just want to tell the caregiver, it's okay. A memory care community is going to take great care of them. You don't have to be this frustrated. You don't have to be this challenged and just completely exhausted. You don't need to do that.
And just to remind everybody, oasissenior-advisors.com, Oasis Senior Advisors is completely free to the family caregiver and the older adult to help find a place for your loved one to live if it gets to the point where he or she can't be at home anymore. And so go to their website, start early, they also will give you referrals to other organizations if there's other services that might be able to help you. But also, Tim, I want to ask you about the project that you have going on with PBS right now.
Yes, we are the only corporate sponsor for a new PBS program called Family Pictures USA. And it chose 3 cities in the U.S. here in Southwest Florida, Detroit, and Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And basically going through photographs and having families tell their story of how they got to the area, why they're in the area. And we had the first 2 premieres, Monday night and Tuesday night, just last night. Overwhelming support, and they're really amazing and compelling stories. So if anybody gets a chance to see those, I highly recommend it. It's on your local PBS channel, Family Pictures USA, sponsored by Oasis Senior Advisors. Thanks for the pitch.
And on PBS. And I, for those of you who are live, I actually haven't even seen them yet because I've been traveling, and I asked my husband to DVR. But if you're live, great. I think the last one's tonight?
It was last night, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought there were 3 or 2. Okay, so but check on PBS even if you're watching this in the future. I'm sure you're gonna be able to find Family Pictures.
Absolutely. Thank you for the plug.
So thanks so much for being a sponsor, Tim. Oasis Senior Advisors, oasissenior-advisors.com. We really appreciate your support.
Our pleasure, Jen. Great working with you and with Hilarity for Charity and RJ's group. Love the relationship.
So now we'd like to welcome RJ Mercedes. He is the Director of Programming and Development with Hilarity for Charity. And again, hilarityforcharity.org. They have some amazing free respite services that you can apply for. RJ, do you have any comments about the topic that we're talking about today, about the concept of caregiving as a choice?
Yeah, I think to reiterate, thank you, Jen and Tim, and for everybody joining live or afterwards. So just kind of reiterate what I was just hearing from Tim of really folks that are at their desperation and kind of getting to the point that they're at a breaking point. And we want to support folks across all spaces, whether you just are thinking there might be a diagnosis to starting to really get into it towards really life end stages. So The other part I wanted to say was that every case is different. So for folks that don't know about our care grants, what we do is we provide free respite relief with our national or international care partner, Home Instead Senior Care. And this is free respite relief that you can go and do what you need to do. And these are trained professional caregivers that will come in and support your loved ones so that you can ensure that your time away, you can focus on you, so that when you come back, you're all the more better to be equipped and be the best caregiver that you can be.
When I first learned of Hilarity for Charity, I just was in awe. I couldn't believe that it exists. It's just such and I remember when I first told my team at Generations that we were going to be collaborating with you all, and I sent out a note to everybody, and there were, I think, 2 people on my team that had never heard of Hilarity for Charity, and one of them is a nurse, and she's been in this field for 40 years, and she said, finally, someone's doing something directly for the caregiver that's really tangible. And she, it's really very rare that we see that kind of service. So it's amazing what you all are doing and the families that you're helping. So remember, you can still make the choice to be a family caregiver with help. And if you go to hilarityforcharity.org, you can look into one of their respite program grants and just apply. And, the rolling applications, you can apply anytime, hilarityforcharity.org.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We like to say that, unfortunately, while there isn't a cure right now, there is care. So we're here to help families today. So whether it's our care grants, our online support groups, virtual book clubs like today, whatever we can do to support you in your need, and direct you to the proper services, we're here to help.
Thank you so much, RJ. We really appreciate being able to collaborate with you to bring services to persons with dementia and their family caregivers. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks.
So now we're going to jump back into our conversation about the concept of caregiving as a choice. And as always, again, if anybody would like to comment or ask a question, feel free to write in. If you're joining us live, you can always send me an email. If you're joining us after for the recorded version of this program, you're welcome to send me an email at jen@generationshealth.com. But do you need to course correct? Would looking at caregiving as a choice that you're making, a decision that you make every day, rather than something you're stuck in, would that help you? Do you need to course correct? When I say stuck, I feel that so many caregivers feel stuck. They feel like they have to, that there's a certain way that they took marriage vows, or it's their mother who raised them. I even find with families that maybe don't have a great relationship with the person who they're taking care of. Maybe it was a parent that wasn't really around when they were younger. They still feel sort of a sense of obligation for a variety of reasons. And I do believe that when we shift our mindset to say, let's look at this as a decision I'm making every day, and every day I have the option to do something a little bit differently. If we move our loved one, if we utilize Tim's help or utilize senior living of some type, you still can choose to be their caregiver. It's just going to be different. You're going to be a different type of caregiver. Or if you utilize Hilarity for Charity's respite grant program, you can choose to apply. And if you receive the grant, great. But you can still choose to be a caregiver. You're just going to caregive in a little bit of a different way. So do you need to change your mindset? Do you need to course correct? So again, reframe. Remind yourself, maybe have a mantra. You're making a choice. I'm making a choice to be the best caregiver today that I can. Making a choice to do the best with what I have, to be a caregiver. In Cruising Through Caregiving, I write about the concept of acknowledging the gift that you've already given so far. Whatever you've done for your loved one so far is a lot. And you might not feel like it is. You might see other people that have done it. Maybe you're doing it for 6 months and you see other people have done it for 5 years. Acknowledge that you've given a gift to your loved one. And whatever you've given so far, you gave, but there might be a time where you can't do quite as much as you've done so far. So acknowledge that anything that you've done for your loved one is a gift. Again, I promise you, and I know that the other health and mental health professionals, Tim, RJ, anybody that's on this program that's worked in elder care, there are a lot of older adults, sadly, that don't get that gift from a friend or family member, that no one's helping out with them. So if you are caregiving, you really are giving a gift to your loved one. And then finally, decide what choices you're going to make in the future. Decide what choices you want to make in the future. What's going well? What do you need to change? Do you need to set any boundaries? You need to turn off some of those voices that tell you that you're not doing it as well as you should. Maybe it's your sister's voice. Maybe it's your cousin's voice. Maybe it's your voice. Sometimes we can be our own worst critic. We're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and we're beating ourselves up. So just remember that whatever choices you have made so far, you always have the option of course correcting. But I really want to ask you to consider, is it possible to look at caregiving as a decision that you're making every day, much like anything else, much like the decision to stay married, to be a parent, to go to your job. Any decision you make, it's a decision that you make over and over again in that role that you're holding as a family caregiver. The family caregiver role, especially dementia caregiving, is hard. I believe that dementia caregiving is one of the hardest things that somebody can do. And so really, thank you for doing it, but you have a lot of options out there. There's a lot of ways that you can be helped. And it might be that you need to make the choice that you're going to do something a little bit differently so you can maintain your sanity. So before we wrap up our short program today, I want to thank Hilarity for Charity and Oasis Senior Advisors. hilarityforcharity.org, oasissenior-advisors.com. Again, both services are completely free. Oasis Senior Advisors, there I believe are a little bit over 80 franchises all over the United States. And they seem to be building more and more. So go to oasissenior-advisors.com and check out their new PBS special family pictures. I have it DVR'd. Hopefully my husband did that for me. I'm sure I can just get it on the app though. But check that out. That's a really neat project that Oasis Senior Advisors is working on. And then Hilarity for Charity, hilarityforcharity.org. They have support groups online. They have all sorts of really exciting fundraising projects. They also have what many of you would be most interested in is the respite grant program. And feel free to apply. They take applications anytime, hilarityforcharity.org. Thank you all so much. If you have questions for our upcoming weeks, just send them to jen@generationshealth.com. We have 2 more weeks left. Next week, and again, for those of you who are listening live, our week 14 is going to be on August 21st, and we're going to have Jennifer Kennedy, Dr. Jennifer Kennedy from the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, and they are the Leadership Association for Hospice and Palliative Care in the United States, and she's going to talk to us about grief and how to prepare for death and when hospice can help you. And then in the last session, we have something really exciting. We have a program that we have Lori Peterson-Sakay from Wells Fargo. And that last session, session 15, is going to be all about taking care of the caregiver, life after caregiving. So when your loved one passes away, or when you have more time to really focus on yourself, maybe you've got plenty of help in place and you can really start to take more care of yourself. What this program 15 is going to be is on a little bit on I joke and I call it the boring advice nobody wants to hear. Everybody knows we should exercise. Everybody knows we need to eat more fruits and vegetables. We're going to talk about that and some ways that we can integrate that more into our lives. But we're also going to talk about financial fitness and how to make sure that you're saving for if you ever need care, and also how you can protect yourself from exploitation, how you can protect yourself and your loved one who has dementia from exploitation. So we're going to have Lori from Wells Fargo on those programs. If you have questions for myself, for Jennifer Kennedy from National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, or for Lori Sakay from Wells Fargo, just send them to jen@generationshealth.com. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you next week.